Dad said. No expensive gifts this Christmas. Meanwhile, my sister sat there opening a brand new iPhone, a designer purse that cost more than my monthly rent, and a diamond bracelet that reflected light every time she moved her wrist. I was sitting 3 feet away from her with absolutely nothing in front of me. No box, no envelope, not even one of those fake joke presents my family used whenever they forgot someone's birthday. Just an empty space on the table. I looked at my mom first because I honestly thought maybe they were waiting. Maybe there was still something coming later. Maybe they planned to surprise me after dinner. My sister kept smiling while she peeled the plastic off the iPhone screen. That was when I finally asked, "What about me?" My mother slapped me before I could even finish the sentence. The sound echoed across the dining room loudly enough that even my little cousin stopped chewing. The room went silent immediately after. My sister froze with the phone still in her hand. My dad stared down at his plate like the mashed potatoes suddenly needed all of his attention. My aunt opened her purse and pretended to search for something. My uncle cleared his throat and grabbed another dinner roll. Nobody said a word. Not one person at that table defended me. The strange part was that I didn't cry. I expected I would. Instead, I stood up slowly, took my coat from the back of the chair, and walked toward the front door. Nobody stopped me. Nobody even called my name. The only sound behind me was my sister quietly asking if the phone needed charging before setup. Every comfortable thing in that house existed because of me. The Netflix account, the Hulu subscription, the Amazon account my mom used every week to order groceries and random items she forgot about 2 days later. The Spotify family plan my sister blasted through the walls at midnight. The phone plan with all 4 lines, including the brand new iPhone she was holding with that huge smile on her face. I walked across the hallway toward the door. The hardwood floor creaked under the second step like it always did. I reached for the handle. Cold air rushed inside the second I opened the door. I stepped outside and closed it carefully behind me. The click of the lock sounded cleaner than anything else I had heard all night. The front yard gate hung halfway open because nobody in my family ever remembered to close it. The street was still wet from the rain earlier that afternoon. Leaves stuck to the curb under the streetlights. I kept walking until I reached the corner. My cheeks still burned from the slap, but the cold air helped numb it. I tightened my coat around myself and stopped beside a telephone pole to button it properly. That was when I decided exactly what I was going to do. I pulled out my phone and ordered an Uber. Not to my parents' house, to my apartment. The apartment none of them even knew existed. I had signed the lease 14 months earlier and never told them. I paid for it myself. Sometimes I stayed there on weekends while my family thought I was sleeping over at friends' places. The walls were plain white. The couch was cheap. The bedroom only had one lamp because I still had not bought another one. But every key to that place belonged only to me. The Uber driver arrived 6 minutes later. Older guy. Quiet. He asked if I wanted music. I told him no. He turned on the radio anyway, low enough that I could barely hear it. Some late-night sports station. I leaned my head against the cold window while we drove through downtown. Christmas lights hung between the street poles. Half of them were burned out. Nobody had bothered fixing them. I kept thinking about my sister opening the iPhone box. That exact smile she always made whenever somebody gave her something expensive. I had seen it my entire life. Birthdays, graduations, random Tuesdays, it never mattered. My mother always found a reason to spoil her. I thought about the slap, about the sound, about the way nobody at the table even looked uncomfortable for more than 2 seconds. I still didn't cry. Mostly, I just felt exhausted. The Uber stopped outside my building 20 minutes later. I thanked the driver and went inside. The night security guard behind the desk was half asleep watching basketball highlights on his phone. He looked up and wished me a Merry Christmas. I said the same thing back. Then I took the stairs to the 4th floor because I hated elevators late at night when the building was empty. My apartment smelled closed up when I walked in. I turned on the kitchen light, dropped my keys into the ceramic bowl beside the counter, filled a glass with water, and drank the entire thing without stopping. Then I poured another one and carried it to my desk. I opened my laptop. While it started up, I put water on the stove for tea. Then I grabbed a fresh notebook from the drawer beside my desk. Dark blue cover. Unused. I wrote the date in the top corner of the first page and started making a list. Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, Spotify family, Verizon family plan with 4 lines, Emily's new iPhone payment plan, Apple Music, shared iCloud storage, HBO Max Disney Plus. YouTube Premium, Emily's gym membership, Dad's car insurance, gas and electric bills connected to my card, Walmart account with my payment information saved. I paused for a second, then added 2 more things. DoorDash and Uber Eats. Mom's wholesale grocery membership. I stared at the list. 17 things. 17 services they used constantly, without ever thinking about who actually paid for them. The kettle started whistling. I poured the water into a mug and let the tea sit while I opened the first website. I started with the grocery membership. Cancellation page. The site offered me discounts 3 different times to stay. I declined every one of them. The confirmation email arrived 12 seconds later. I created a new folder in my inbox called December and saved it there. Next came the food delivery apps. I removed my cards from both accounts, logged out from every device, and changed the passwords anyway. Then Amazon. I deleted my parents' address from the account. It had been the default shipping address because my sister ordered something almost every weekend. I kept the account itself. I still plan to use it. Disney Plus canceled. HBO canceled. Hulu canceled. Amazon Prime canceled. YouTube Premium canceled. Apple Music canceled. Then Spotify, the one my sister played loudly enough for me to hear through the walls almost every night growing up. The app asked if I was sure. I clicked yes. The app warned me my family would lose access at the end of the billing cycle. I clicked yes again. I took a sip of tea and burned my tongue a little. Then I opened Netflix. 5 profiles stared back at me. Mine, Mom's, Dad's, Emily's, and 1 profile called Family Room that nobody had ever actually used. I canceled the subscription. The website asked why. I selected no longer needed and confirmed it. Afterward, I leaned back in my chair and stared at the screen for a few seconds. Not because I felt guilty, mostly because I felt calm for the first time all night. Then I opened the Verizon account. Full cancellation required paperwork, but temporary suspension could be done online. All 4 lines appeared on the screen. Mine at the top, theirs underneath. I suspended my father's line, then my mother's, then Emily's. The website informed me that suspended lines would lose access to calls, texts, and mobile data until the account holder approved reactivation. Processing time could take up to 6 hours. My sister's brand new iPhone was connected to the line I had just suspended. Sooner or later, she was going to realize the phone she spent the entire evening showing off could not connect to anything. I didn't smile. I didn't regret it either. I simply moved on to the next tab. Next, I removed my parents and my sister from the shared iCloud plan. The system warned me they would lose extra storage within 48 hours unless they purchased their own subscription. I clicked confirm. Family photos, backups, contacts, everything would stop syncing soon. I shut the laptop halfway and rubbed my eyes. One thing remained, the internet. The Wi-Fi at my parents' house had been under my name for 3 years. My father had asked me to sign for it after his old account was rejected because of unpaid bills. At the time, he promised it would only be temporary, like everything else in that house. I logged into the provider account. The modem showed active. 7 devices connected. The living room TV, my sister's gaming console, both of my parents' laptops, the new iPhone still connected through Wi-Fi, a wireless printer, and one of those smart speakers my mom constantly yelled at whenever it misunderstood her. I took another sip of tea, then changed the admin password, changed the Wi-Fi name, and updated the Wi-Fi password too. Every device disappeared from the screen one after another. Disconnected, disconnected, disconnected. After that, I clicked temporarily suspend service. The website asked for a reason. I selected personal. A loading circle spun for 3 seconds. Then the modem status turned gray, inactive. At that exact moment, someone in that house was probably complaining that the Wi-Fi stopped working. Maybe my sister was trying to activate the new iPhone and wondering why nothing loaded. Maybe my father was already yelling. Maybe my mother was blaming everyone except herself. I would never know. Honestly, I did not care enough to think about it for long. I closed the laptop, carried my mug to the sink, rinsed it, and turned off the kitchen light. Then I sat on the edge of my bed and finally touched my cheek. Still warm. No longer stinging, just sore. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I looked at the screen without picking it up. Mom. Then another message. The Wi-Fi isn't working. Another. Emily's phone won't connect. Another. What did you do? I turned the phone face down for a few seconds. I sat there quietly, thinking about everything I had done over the last hour. I did not feel proud. I did not feel guilty either. Mostly, I felt organized, like I had finally cleaned a room that had been a mess for years. I stood up again and walked back to the desk. I opened the laptop one more time. This time, I emailed my apartment building manager. Good evening. Starting tomorrow, please do not release packages or mail address to me to anyone else, including family members. Thank you. I hit send. Then I opened my banking app. 2 credit cards connected to almost every automatic payment in my parents' house. I temporarily froze both cards. The app asked if I wanted replacement cards mailed out. I requested new ones. Then I manually canceled every recurring payment connected to the old cards, one by one. Electric bill, streaming services, insurance, memberships, delivery apps. Done. When I finally closed the laptop for the second time, the apartment felt quieter than usual. Not peaceful exactly, just empty. I changed into sweatpants, folded my sweater over the chair, and placed my shoes neatly beside the wall. Then I climbed into bed and stared at the ceiling. There was a thin crack in the corner above the window. The same crack I noticed the first night I moved in. My phone buzzed again and again. I did not check it. I picked it up, switched every setting to silent until morning, and dropped it back onto the nightstand. The screen went dark. I turned off the lamp. By the time I closed my eyes, the burning in my cheek had completely faded. The alarm went off at 7 the next morning. I got up immediately, made the bed, showered, made coffee, and picked out a gray suit I had not worn in weeks. The mark on my face had faded into a light pink shadow by morning, but I still used extra concealer. It covered most of it. Good enough. Before leaving, I finally checked my phone. 19 missed calls. 34 texts. I ignored all of them. At the office, I arrived 10 minutes early, like always. The floor was mostly empty except for the receptionist and my boss. Through the glass wall of her office, I could see Sandra talking on the phone with a frustrated expression. I sat down at my desk and opened the file she assigned me Friday afternoon. Westbridge Construction, LLC. 21 years in business. 3 primary partners. Several active projects. The bank financing their newest development requested an outside review before renewing funding. I scrolled through the vendor list absent-mindedly while drinking coffee. Then I stopped. Harper Supply Services. Harper was my mother's maiden name. My uncle Dennis owned the company, the same uncle who kept eating dinner rolls while my mother slapped me across the face. I kept reading. A few lines lower, another name caught my attention. Coleman Concrete. Coleman was the last name of my father's longtime business partner. I leaned back slowly in my chair. Maybe it was a coincidence, but it did not feel like one. Westbridge Construction was paying both companies regularly. Large payments. Repeated payments. I closed the file, opened it again, and read the names one more time. Then Sandra tapped lightly on the glass wall and motioned for me to come into her office. "You already started the file?" she asked. "Yeah." "Problem." I sat down across from her desk and placed the folder in front of me. "There are family connections." She frowned slightly. "How close?" "One vendor belongs to my uncle. Another belongs to my father's business partner. Do you need to step away from the case?" "I can if necessary. I'd rather disclose it now than let it become an issue later." Sandra studied me quietly for a moment. Then she opened a drawer and slid a disclosure form across the desk. "Fill this out. But unless we find an actual conflict, stay on the file." I nodded. While I completed the paperwork, she continued reading through the case notes. Then she spoke again without looking up. "One more thing. The bank requested this review because they suspect inflated vendor billing." I stopped writing for half a second. Sandra noticed immediately. "If you find something," she said, "you report it exactly like any other case. No warnings. No favors." "Understood." I signed the form. She signed underneath my name and filed it away. Back at my desk, I reopened the case file and started from the beginning. Invoices. Payment summaries. Vendor history. I was halfway through the second year of records when reception called my extension around 11 o'clock. "There's a woman downstairs asking for you." "Who?" "She says she's your aunt." My stomach tightened immediately. I took the elevator down to the lobby. Aunt Linda stood near the front entrance, still wearing the same coat from Christmas dinner. Her eyes looked swollen, like she had not slept. "We need to talk," she said quietly. "Not here." I took her across the street to a small cafe. I ordered tea. She ordered nothing. The second we sat down, she leaned closer across the table. "Your mother's losing her mind," she said. Your father's screaming at everybody. Emily cried all night. Nothing in the house works. I stirred my tea slowly. The phones are off, she continued. The internet too. Your dad says what you did is illegal. It isn't. I know. That surprised me enough to look up. She glanced around before lowering her voice further. There's something else you should know. I waited. Your father has been taking money out of the company for months. Maybe longer. I stayed completely still. The gifts last night, she whispered. He didn't pay for those himself. I felt my fingers tighten around the mug. How do you know? His business partner mentioned it back in October. He was angry. Said your father was putting everybody at risk. And now I'm telling you because you're the only person in that family who understands this kind of stuff. I let out a slow breath. Interesting timing. She flinched slightly. I know. And last night when she hit me, her eyes dropped to the table. I should have said something. But you didn't. No. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she reached into her purse and slid a folded piece of paper across the table. A phone number. And a name. Richard Coleman, my father's business partner. He wants to speak with you, she said quietly. I looked down at the paper in my hands. Why would he contact me? Because he's worried. She stood before I could respond, then paused beside the table. Do what you think is right, Hannah. After she left, I unfolded the paper again and stared at the number for a long moment before slipping it into my coat pocket. Outside the cafe window, people walked by carrying shopping bags and leftover Christmas boxes like everything in the world was completely normal. Inside my chest, though, something felt different. I went back to the office and tried focusing on the file in front of me. It didn't help. Every time I looked at the vendor list, I saw my father sitting silently at the dinner table pretending not to notice what my mother had done. I saw my sister smiling over her new phone. I saw my uncle calmly eating while I stood there embarrassed in front of everyone. By 6 o'clock that evening, most of the office had emptied out. Sandra passed my desk on her way out and stopped briefly. You heading home soon? Probably another hour. She nodded toward the file open on my monitor. Don't bury yourself in work tonight. I won't. But I already had. The second she left, I pulled the folded paper from my coat pocket and stared at the number again. Richard Coleman. Growing up, my father talked about him constantly. Richard said this. Richard approved that. Richard believed the market would shift next quarter. I'd heard his name at family dinners for almost 15 years. I never imagined he'd contact me directly. Before I could change my mind, I picked up my phone and typed a short message. This is Hannah Parker. My aunt gave me your number. 3 dots appeared almost instantly. Can we meet tomorrow? Lunch. Public place. I stared at the message for several seconds before replying. Fine. 2 minutes later, he sent the restaurant address. An old steakhouse downtown. 1:30 p.m. I locked my phone and returned to work. Around 8:30, I finally shut down my computer and headed home. The apartment felt colder than usual when I walked inside. I heated leftover pasta in the microwave and ate standing at the kitchen counter while checking emails on my phone. Halfway through dinner, my screen lit up again. Emily. The first message from her since Christmas dinner. Please answer me. Then another. I didn't know about the money. I stared at the words for a long time before locking the phone without replying. I barely slept that night, not because I felt guilty, but because my brain refused to slow down. At 7 o'clock the next morning, I was already dressed and drinking coffee before sunrise. By noon, I'd reviewed enough financial records to realize the billing issues weren't random. The numbers followed patterns. Vendor charges higher than market value. Payments oddly divided across different months. Expenses that didn't make sense. Nothing obvious enough to trigger alarms immediately, but enough to feel wrong. At 1:15, I grabbed my coat and headed downtown. Richard Coleman was already seated when I walked into the restaurant. Late 50s, heavy set, expensive watch, loosened tie. He stood when he saw me approaching. Hannah. Mr. Coleman. Richard is fine. I sat across from him. The waiter came over immediately, but Richard ordered without even look. Looking at the menu. Steak. Mineral water. I ordered the same, mostly because I didn't care enough to think about food. The waiter walked away. Richard folded his hands together and leaned forward slightly. I'm going to be honest with you from the beginning, he said quietly. I'm not an innocent man. I said nothing. I've done things over the years I'm not proud of. But your father crossed lines that put all of us at risk. My stomach tightened. How bad? He glanced around first to make sure nobody nearby could hear. For the last 18 months, Your father has been pulling company money for personal spending. I stayed completely still. Cars, gifts, trips, cash transfers disguised as consulting fees. The restaurant suddenly felt warmer. Consulting fees to who? He hesitated. Your mother. Your sister too. I blinked slowly. My sister. She's been receiving monthly payments for almost 3 years. I leaned back in the booth. For a second, I honestly wondered if Emily even knew. Then I remembered the shopping bags, the endless packages, the expensive gym membership she somehow paid for despite never keeping a job longer than 4 months. Maybe she knew. Maybe she never asked. Richard lowered his voice further. Your father assumed nobody would look too closely because the bank trusted us. Then the outside review landed in your office. That wasn't planned. I know. He paused. That may actually save you. The waiter returned with water. Neither of us touched it. Richard reached into a leather folder beside him and slid a thick envelope across the table. I brought copies. I looked at it, but didn't touch it yet. If these are real, I said carefully, they need to go through official channels. They will. You can't send things to my personal email. You can't privately hand me documents and expect me to ignore procedure. A faint smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. You really are different from your father. I ignored the comment. If you cooperate formally, it gets documented. That matters. That's exactly why I contacted you. I finally picked up the envelope. Inside were copies of invoices, bank transfers, and payment summaries. Enough paperwork to make my chest feel heavy within 30 seconds. Richard studied my expression carefully. I'm trying to protect myself, he admitted. I won't lie about that. At least that's honest. He nodded once. One more thing. Your father will find out we met. I figured. This city's smaller than people think. I took a sip of water. My mother has already called me 40 times in 2 days. I'm not too worried about another angry phone call. For the first time since I sat down, Richard almost smiled, though it disappeared quickly. I knew your mother when we were younger, he said quietly. I immediately regretted letting the conversation become personal. She always favored your sister. I looked up sharply. He continued before I could stop him. She never hid it either. I set my glass down harder than intended. Stick to the business side, Richard. His expression changed immediately. Fair enough. The food arrived a few minutes later. Neither of us talked much while eating. By the end of lunch, I already knew the situation was bigger than I first thought. When we stepped outside afterward, cold wind hit us immediately. Richard adjusted his coat. I'll send everything formally tonight. Good. Then he looked at me one last time before heading toward the curb. For what it's worth, he said quietly, none of this started because of you. I didn't answer. I watched him get into his SUV and drive away, then stood there alone on the sidewalk for almost a full minute before finally walking back toward the office. On the way, I stopped inside a pharmacy and bought stronger concealer. The mark on my cheek still showed under bright lighting. Back at work, Sandra looked up the second I entered her office. How'd lunch go? One of the vendors wants to cooperate. That caught her attention immediately. How cooperative? He brought documentation. Sandra sat back slowly. That fast. He's scared. Good. Fear makes people honest. I handed her the envelope. She opened it carefully and skimmed the first few pages. Her expression hardened almost immediately. Jesus. Yeah. She closed the folder. We processed this formally tonight. By 7:30, the office was nearly empty except for me, Sandra, and someone from legal. The documents confirmed everything Richard claimed and added more. Bank transfers, personal expenses, payments labeled as consulting fees sent directly to accounts connected to my mother and sister. I stared at Emily's name on the screen longer than I should have. Sandra noticed. You okay? Honestly, I don't know. She nodded slowly like that answer made perfect sense. Around 9 o'clock, I finally left the office. The second I stepped outside, my phone started vibrating again. Mom, ignored. Dad, ignored. Emily, ignored. Then one final text from my mother. Your father says you're destroying this family. I stared at the message while waiting for the crosswalk light, then slipped my phone back into my pocket. No, I wasn't destroying the family. I was simply the first person who stopped pretending nothing was wrong.